All right, in this explainer, we're diving deep into a pretty controversial theory of attraction, and it's all based on the work of the YouTube channel 𝐂𝐨𝐵𝐿. Now, when we say Machiavellian, what we're really talking about is a strategy that's cunning, it's calculated, and it's all about power. The whole idea here is that the path to desire isn't through warm affection, but through a cold, strategic game. So let's unpack this very different approach to human connection.
So, this is the core idea right here. The entire theory really hinges on this one provocative thought. The thinking is, in the game of attraction, being a mystery is way more powerful than being an open book. Basically, anything that's too easy to get is just as easy to forget.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to walk through the 5 stages of this strategy just as the source lays them out, starting with how to create a little curiosity with your absence and following it all the way to what the theory describes as a full-blown obsession.
Let's kick things off with the core tactic, the power of absence. Now, according to this theory, ignoring someone isn't just a passive thing you do. No, it's an active, strategic move. It's designed from the ground up to completely shift the power dynamic in your favor.
You see, the source basically says that underneath all our polite interactions, attraction is really a game of hierarchy. You know, who's chasing, who's pulling back, and who's ultimately setting the rhythm of the whole dance. This theory sees it as a kind of silent battle of wills.
Now, this is a really important distinction the theory makes. This strategy isn't about being disrespectful or showing disdain. That just pushes people away, right? Instead, it's about a strategic coldness, one that creates intrigue and makes the other person stop and wonder, what are they thinking?
Okay, so that leads us right into the second phase, and this is where the strategy really starts to take shape, creating what the source calls a psychological void.
So what is this void? Well, it's all about disrupting expectations. The source material paints a picture of a woman who is used to getting a ton of male attention, and then suddenly, one person is strategically absent. The theory argues that this break in the pattern is what creates this powerful, nagging confusion. And that's where it all starts. According to the theory, our minds just can't stand unanswered questions. We have this deep need to fill in the blanks. And in the process of trying to figure you out, you start to take up more and more of their mental space.
And this right here is the key mechanic behind the whole thing. The source is basically claiming that confusion is a much more powerful tool for attraction than straight-up rejection. I mean, think about it. Rejection gives a clear answer. It ends the game. But unpredictability? That forces the game to keep playing out inside the other person's head.
So all this confusion, what does it do? Well, it forces the other person to completely reevaluate your worth. And that brings us to our third section, which takes a classic idea from economics and applies it straight to attraction, the scarcity principle.
The theory lays out this really stark contrast. Anything that's abundant is seen as less valuable, right? But something that's scarce, something you have to work for, well, that becomes an object of intense desire. By being strategically absent, you're no longer a common commodity. You become a rare prize.
And this is the absolute kicker. This perceived independence signals huge value. In the dynamic the source describes, it shifts the man from just being another option to being the challenge. It sends the message that his attention is a scarce resource that has to be won, not just handed out.
So what happens when someone is faced with the sudden loss of power, this lack of predictability? Well, the theory says the next phase kicks in, a determined quest to get control of the situation back, and really to get control of their own feelings. The theory actually outlines these escalating steps. You can almost see it happening. Each one is an attempt to get a reaction, right? To see if she can still pull your emotional strings. But according to the source, every attempt just ends up revealing her own vulnerability and makes her invest even more emotionally.
And this right here, this is the huge psychological flip at the very heart of the theory. The focus isn't on her own desire anymore or whether she finds you attractive. No, it becomes all about solving the puzzle of your lack of desire. And for the ego, that is an intoxicating challenge.
The source really hammers this point home. Whoever reacts loses. By refusing to play the game, by not reacting to these tests, the man in this particular scenario forces her to make all the moves. And in doing so, she continually exposes her growing need for his validation.
All right, we're at the final stage now. This is where the theory details how this whole cycle of confusion, reevaluation, and failed attempts to regain control can lead to a final and pretty powerful transformation inside the other person's mind.
You can see the path here. It's a domino effect. His absence creates that empty space. Her imagination rushes in to fill it. That imagination then blows up his mystery and his value. Suddenly, he's this enigma that she just has to solve. And that unsolved puzzle, well, that's what becomes a psychological fixation.
And what's so wild about this part of the theory is how it taps into our own ego's defense mechanisms. To protect herself from the simple, painful idea that she's just being ignored, her subconscious mind elevates his status. It's just easier to accept being overlooked by someone exceptional than by someone ordinary.
So we get to the great paradox of this whole theory. By being physically and emotionally absent, he paradoxically achieves a permanent and powerful presence inside her mind. He becomes this unforgettable puzzle, a kind of loss that she feels compelled to reclaim. So at the end of the day, the theory we've just walked through strips away all the romance to reveal what it sees as a cold, mechanical game of power. And it leaves us with a pretty critical question to think about. Is this an accurate map of how human desire actually works? Or is it just a manual for manipulation? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining this explainer.